남에게 상원을야 아는 아주 딜이 도마 아주 딜이 쉬기.
First of all, I would like to wish everyone good morning.
나중에 나 다 가서 개인교회 신이 개인교회 신이 이거디 될래야 교회 가서 권수원에 교회 신이 신이 교회 신이 때문에 편에 말하면 님이 다나시디 삼절 관계권에 된주 따지죠. 뒤나는데 교회 신이 이게 뭐와 신이 다디 로즈 슈자에 기지셔.
Now, yesterday I began speaking about the subject of the condition, the spiritual master. And so this is, as I mentioned yesterday, this is described in terms of the characteristics of the spiritual master, the benefits of following a spiritual master, the faults of not following a spiritual master, and the manner in which we should follow a spiritual master in terms of our thoughts and our actions. And so yesterday I spoke generally about the essence or the characteristics of the spiritual master.
다 될래야 가르쳐야지. 교회 신앙이다 신이 딱 때마디 다 될래야 가르쳐야다. 다 뒤에 가장 본도 지금 너디게 게 나는 수배 교회 신앙이 신이 교회 신이 신이 딱 때마다 되게 튼듀스로 질이야 튼듀베스로 질이야 아니 아주디 타고름식이 교회 신이 신이 숨송요.
Yesterday, in discussing the characteristics of the spiritual master, I mentioned, or I discussed the characteristics of the spiritual master that are given in the ornament of the sutras. Now, Gampopa here gives a brief description of this that is more like a summary of these characteristics.
달라야 시럽 침묘관에 시행게 남난데마 인지 침묘관에 뉴제 야와르민 도와 다 지디 야고 정해면도 지디 버지다 조데다지 센들의 샤바미아버스 레지 인세에 소사로지 다 드리지 친이 숨 드리 숨래.
And so here, the characteristics are given that they have great wisdom and that they have the compassion that can lead their students without bias. And then a third characteristic would be that they have no attachment to this life.
제가 토마르지 라마 마데메 콩레야 로메게 라마 리버타 라메게 라마 리버타 아니 딱제체네 가르레다지 라마 친이데 뎀바 로만네데 뎀바 다 임베지 가르레 녜신 종서머베다 갈라간좀 지 시베 토네 되네 라로군 제바 자디 추구야 임베레.
Now, before a student is going to attend or serve the Lama, then first of all, the student must examine the Lama carefully, and the Lama must also examine the student carefully in order to see whether the Lama is an authentic Lama with all the characteristics, and also to see whether the student is an appropriate vessel for the teachings. And so this is in order to give confidence or to give certainty in this. In other words, it is to know whether this is so. In brief, this is a way to establish the connection between the master and the student.
Keshma, Kenyan Chambu. Juchadi in Dusane, and Lomang building the Taji Chegu Chumba in there, Taji Chegua, and the Sungore.
And the reason for this is that if we just sort of follow any old Lama, then there is a danger, that there's a danger here. And so for that reason, in the Tantras, in many Tantras, it is said that we should examine the Lama for up to 12 years. And so in any case, we need to examine the Lama, and this is because it is an important point. It is critical for us to examine the Lama. And so we need to examine for many, even though it says we need to examine for many years, it is still important to keep examining.
다시 시스고 만다. 경 견을 이동미 좀 떼네. 디상까지 미견경가 쳐네. 대대 저다 다시 시스두사네. 네거티브 미륜초네 삼다데 아주 다시 시스하는지. 내제 고알랭이 알아. 이네 디디겁들 미머래. 질 가사 지 아주 쳐봐. 타바트 누님의 가사 지금이나 여기 지금 미션기 꽤 연대는 강도도 따와도 괜시다 되게요. 라바르도 라마 계신이 세나 따지셔야 라마들이 연대기 산 따고 이말이스. 마도 꽤 이통미도 gangan 되네. 따지셔야 될이야. 안 겁들이야. 따지지 쓰고 말이스.
When we examine the spiritual master, then we're primarily looking to see the qualities of the master. We're not really looking to see the faults. So it's not a question where we're examining the master to find their problems or their faults. These days, there are some people who, when they examine people, only look for their faults. They're looking in the negative for the negative aspects, but that is not here. What is meant here. So, in generally, when an individual who seeks liberation examines a potential spiritual friend, then in examining their good qualities and their bad qualities, primarily we're not looking for the faults. Especially when we are examining the spiritual master, we are looking at the positive qualities. And so here it is not intended that we should be looking primarily for faults.
그노 뭐슈 가지고 와야 돼. 그노 만화 가지고 와야 돼. 계속 스타일샤. 그노 추소나. 라마디 지 연대긴 영어 내외이네요. 라마티 통수야. 소소 난수야라. 다디 가서에 지 경경어 나데 봐. 경경어 통데 봐. 내용데요. 배나 벤진 나루도 위냐. telova thomra jeve kalya nyaba ji nya sunsi chedeng desidusane de hob de se nusane de gyenge namaro jiliya do sibi mere le nusane de tabu ora yoake nyanga yabi
And so it is important that our motivation not be mixed or it not be mistaken. If our motivation is mistaken, then even if the Lama were to have qualities in the student's perception or in the appearances that the student perceives, they would see these qualities, these positive qualities, as being false. For example, when Naropa first met Tilopa, he saw him killing and eating fish. And so when you first think about this, this seems like a fault. And so this is a danger.
단도나 따지 쟤는 그걸 가르쳐야지 당원에 친이다 내가 이봐 시신도 양되지 라마르 마데미체 최머시비체네 단도배 무튀네 배 가르쳐야도 스테데빈데 나오요 말았어 베나 코르게비기 사이 피드다 야 라마 때문에 차로레스 텔레야 순수에 가르쳐잖아 아니 호르게비기 예 가르쳐스 사이 피드다야 최문시비체 유림보를 따져신데 그래서 따져신데네 안 담아라야 사이 피드다야 당에 그냥 로추고 봐도 그냥 간전도 진전도 sen 딱제세네 대비 스테자 그냥 라마 상보이 지레샤 제자다 최나로 지수그래 최나로 지수두산에 네 사제 빈데게 오다 교랑야 최기 뇌단 댐 메데 우마 딱지시기만 좋스 제자 될래야다 가르로 교랑기 가라 로투스 다지 세브레 네 교랑 더지 다지 세고 레스데 다 로투니 중이를 다 가르쳐야지 딘데체네 가르쳐야지 라로군 데버르 세난다도 최나 딘데 계시 소소를 딘데시아래 다 가르쳐 로마비 버르르데 최천연산면 최 제법이 맞지 네법이 많이 딘데체네 딘데체비나 대좀 워르체 있고요. 아래다 숨버래. 지당 고랑다 간다. 수지 라마스니데 데베 임바 가르르 고랑 녜시 깨버 세난다도 하고 디급드네 손데 파지지 라말 댄지 쉬쉬과 개심이다 간다. 딘데베 지가르에 당안조 미다벤 두시에다 나다나 신기 미셀니 몸에 두셔라 소바 다든데 거네 거저 라만디 신이는 데마치 이니미니 다 니에소나 남사디 군주네 에너지 최 슈아 하드조 근데체네 말을 레마도 가르쳐 딱제 샤비 제제베 두주시비 나르제 드분이 스타트하면 되게 가르쳐 섬는 게 시게 되게 다 이민에 지 드레시 되잖아 야고 말레스
When we examine the Lama, we should examine them until we know that they have the characteristics, that they fit the characteristics of a Lama. But if we were to wait and continue examining them and not follow them or not attend them until we know that time, then that would not be good. It's like the story of the Sakya Pandita and the Mongol emperor. And so the story behind this is that the Mongol emperor first examined the Sakya Pandita for many years. He spent 6 years examining the Dharma, examining Sakya Pandita without asking for any Dharma teachings. And at the end of 6 years, he then said to the Sakya Pandita, I've spent 6 years examining you, and now I am certain that you are a good Lama. So now please give me some Dharma teachings. And in response, the Sakya Pandita said, well, now I have to, you've been examining me, but I don't know whether you're an appropriate vessel to be able to receive the Lama. And so just as you have spent 6 years examining me, I'm now going to spend 6 years examining you to make sure that you are an appropriate vessel. So that's 6 years, 6 years the other, 12 years total. That's a very long time to take to establish the connection between a master and student. And when we think about it, then maybe it's too long a time. It's spending so many years without receiving any Dharma, without doing any practice. It's really too long a time. And so, in essence, what we need to do is we need to examine the Lama until we're certain that they have the characteristics of the Lama. And once we have that certainty or understand that, then we should serve the Lama and request Dharma from them. Because we need to remember, we need to remember impermanence, and we need to remember the meaninglessness of human life. And so, when we need to look and examine the Lama to see if they have the characteristics, and once we find that they do, then we need to ask for Dharma from them. If we spend a long time examining them without asking for them for the Dharma, then there's no real result for it. We have that we have some certainty in them, but that alone is not enough.
Nornaji Donga Tamjene Lome Lamalea Tsing Demide Yunden Demide Dashi Chowre Sunga Tsangwa Loma de Lama Mademe Kondo Chegujire Madabe Lome Lama de Den Sawe Jesu Daji Chelo Tamje Porgoresu 단동에 배다제 제네 다 진이 되면 돼서 다제 요마르스 다 댄사회 슈글라 다베 윤디 오만 난시민도 다 윤디 오만 난시민도 지금 가르 윤디 체가츠마도 민도사로 근데 삼당하디 데 콜로레스 대야 된담예마사 나 드리지 나올래야 가르수 알았잖아 전대왕 라마 교인의原点데 탐제든 득보여봐 여망이지 나한테 가르친 거 알아서나 신이 탐제 상황이 많이 비나原点 시에 차왔산다 교인의原点 니기 나네原点 망가려 버려 교인이 나는 지고는 잡이나原点 지고 체를 줘봐 다 근데 좀 있는 지고 윤이 난 윤대 망가요 근데 그거랬어 마도야 전대 님에 뒤서 견대 미덴베게 라마 가르치니 근데 매송하고 된다 있어 말해 다 간다야 진짜지기 되네 배 라마 가르쳐야지 님에 뒤고 왕가 다 간다라 니뒤 왕게 라마 견대 윤대 제데 제매수도 야라 말 윤대 근대에서는 자도 윤대 군조 산을 섬으로다 교육군대 윤대 군조로 된듯이 걸 내가 가르쳐야지 제가 윤대 망아 교육용아 다대야 윤대 망아 교육용아 사대 코란 디 코란 그 교육텔라 되네 윤대대 망아 윤대 된듯이 삼고면로 다 된듯이 된 거래서 다들 인주산 단도나 라마 댄서 제서 따지 셀로 탐자 랑서 버니 아니 교 통중부이나 대령이기다 가르쳐 랭에 드바 다 된제기 때네 지난데가 임바 다 몇번째네 가르쳐 윤댕이 잘 따와마도 교인이 잘 따 미루스 되게 빼들 가르쳐서 빼들다 봉엠 정지 줄렘받아 매다고 줄렘받아 봉엠 매다고 줄렘도 산다 간주문도 상을 두서 가시고 말 다디 코란을 고야디 정지디 인자 정지디 그런 집니 컨트롤스 나도지 근주문 좀배 지류 탐제 양짐 주고 말고 근데 뉴스안에 대능신 로메 라마 때문에 급수임이냐 라메기 윤된디기 차네 수솔이야 가지지기 렌토도 가지지기 주 가르쳐다 부모들 줄리면 집토도 차 아니 교육이 차야에는 비교이 차는 민고와 차 아니 교육이 차려야 따뜻한 삼당과의 이세
And so, in brief, when in what it says in all of the sutras and tantras is that when the master and student examine each other to see if they have the characteristics, this is before the student attends and serves the lama. Once you have started to attend, to follow the lama, then you don't need to examine anymore. At that point, you need to look toward the lama's qualities. It's like once you start following the lama, then if you start saying, well, before they had a lot of qualities, a lot of positive qualities, but now they don't have as many, they have more faults, then that is an incorrect understanding. And so it is as it is said, when we look for the Lama in this age of strife, there are none who have all the qualities and all who have some faults. And so when we look for the characteristics of the Lama, we aren't going to find one who has only the positive qualities. So we need to look for ones who have mostly qualities or more qualities and comparatively fewer faults. It's like if they had weight, you could put the qualities and the faults on the scale, and the positive qualities would way more. And so in this way, it's enough if the positive qualities are greater than the faults. And so in particular, in this age of strife, in this degenerate age, we're not going to find someone who has all positive qualities and no faults. Now, this is said in terms of the students of the degenerate time. Right now, when we find lamas, they're going to have a mixture of positive and negative qualities. And so it would be very difficult to find someone who is perfect in the qualities, who has all of the complete qualities. And so for that reason, we need to examine, we need to follow someone who has comparatively more qualities than faults. And this is more, and this is evaluating their positive qualities in relation to their faults to make sure that there are more of these. In brief, once we have examined the lamas, then we need to give up our own, once we have started following the lamas, then we need to give up our own preconceptions. And because at that point, if we start seeing faults in the lama, we should understand that these are our own obscurations from our own obscurations from bad karma. We need to look for the positive qualities. We need to look for the good. We don't need to look for the faults. As it is said, it is like how a bee looks for nectar from a flower. When a bee goes to flowers looking for nectar, they go right to where the nectar is and they sip the nectar directly. They don't go to all the different parts of the flower and try to get things from all the different parts. They go right to where the nectar that they need is and suck that nectar. And so likewise, when the student is what the student needs to gain from the lama are the qualities, and so we need to try to gain the qualities as much as it can, just like that bee trying to sip nectar from a flower. And so we do not actually need the faults of the lama. What we need are the qualities, and so we need to think in this way.
머시 다다정 아주 라마 수수기회 라마 저 견다연된 제마스네 장도 전기 차유 좀 가르쳐에 견기 차 여버 통화대야 초진에 야버르시 수수기회 라마 교회 신이 나서도 냠도 냠도체 안 가서는 시베 클라사 가서는 시 돌로게 가서는 지 기시셰 니데지 메나데 가서게 되니 대전 주고 맞다 니데지 가서에 가서다 개념 섬으로에 개번 냠바 다 니데지기 수수기회 라마 개회신이 능수를 니데지 마도 메미나 정문에서네 가서다지 가서 남주 배제나는 세대학 따지 전주선마당 4,000불 내외 전주선마당 안지 상계 주배고 나 대리소지 차는 응가 주배 녀래 가서 녀래 신대별 파샤는 제야 고라이 엄다 제야도 민도가 제금도 와 가시지 밀람난 바지 지금도 쓰도 따지네 밀람도 쉐다 다다 드린주스탄에 근데 교행기 너무 때문에야 오늘 알아서래 태가를 잡아치세요 그럽시다 아주도 잡으라고 해야지 아주도 태가를 잡아치세요 아주 태가를 끊으시세요 디 야부지래 마도디 저 도무스 개처음다 디 하고 가야 돼 개처음을지 차디 열에 정도 셈마도베 상상 아주디 so perfect somewhere. 뷰 타고 싶지 않아. 대 교회를 제도 삼성. 잘하지. 뷰 다다를 주는 주산이야. 고랑 교회를 지기. 가서 디뷰다 장도 삼아를 지기. 내가 가서지. 야 대 교회를 차는. 제사 디준세 되네. 미교회 속에 정원의 셰비네. 직전에 연대 군인지 통보이네. 대 교회를 통하는 거야. 제사 교회사들이야다 미수수기 토나르지 담이되어빈데서 콜 체스게 요만다 교회사들 텔레 교회사들 체스하지 가라서는 다 교회의 윤대사들 마체지 미수수기 삼려 나라라 교회의 윤대사들 원진로 미다미다 야래 가시에 걸어야 돼 교회 가인한테 가시에 걸어 윤대 자대 이게 제사 콜 지수자스게 매여서셔 대야 라메메로 로마 인베스 로메메로 라마이스 로마티기 메로도 라마레스 소소 가리임베데 라메간 통용거레스 라마다 시다사고도 라마 차도 친분도 라마 되자 친분도 사야 직세나 소소 되자 친보다 소소 차도 친 ngaje 친분 여비인다 대 통용거레스 가라서 민가게 진식이 나올라 탐지지 콘도사딩에서 통한 거. 탐지 콘도사딩에서 두번란에서 들이 통한 거. 그 철롱라딩에 들이 미가레스 통하나 배 콘도스 사인도. 아니 주산에 티준세되네. 로메멜로 라마이 숨래. 세상 견 토마테 유엔내기 초서로지 근데지 충분입니다. 아니 신내지 뭐네 로마티기 라마 된다는데 만으로와 지금 상보지 충분히 따르시면 로서 이를 지금도 이내에 교회 통보도 연대도 줘서 야 왔다 들으시네.
Actually, when we are following a lama who is an ordinary individual, and we see them as having some aspects that are faults, then from one perspective, this is actually good. Because when the spiritual master is a spiritual friend, then it means like we're closer to them. There's something, we can see that they eat food the same way we do. They wear clothes the same way we do. We can have conversations with them. If not, it wouldn't work. So it's important for us to be able to have a lama who is taking a birth on an equal level as ourselves, and it's important for the lama to demonstrate themselves as appearing as ordinary individuals. Otherwise, it would be like all of the bodhisattvas on the high levels or the Nirmanakaya Buddhas that we read about in texts. But we don't actually meet any of those, do we? So it's, of course, some people they say them in their dreams, but dreams are only dreams. And so in that way, when you think about it, if the Lama has some aspects that are negative or false, then this is a way for us to make a direct connection with the Lama. They're like us, and so we can have a direct relationship with them. And so in that respect, we should understand that this is in some way of equality. It is important for us to understand that. Otherwise, sometimes when we see something as being too perfect, as being too good, too fine, then that itself becomes a fault. Sometimes you have a thing, a really beautiful, excellent, perfect thing, and it's just too good, it's just too perfect, and you see that as a problem. And the reason for this is that when we are looking at positive negative qualities, then whether they seem to be positive or negative really depends upon how we see them as being. It's really in the perception of the person who is seeing it. And so in this way, because it's in our own perception, there's really no limit to what we can find faults in. So everyone has different ideas of what a fault is or what a positive quality is. And so what is a fault to some people is a positive qualities to others. And so really there's no definite saying that this is definitely a positive quality, this is definitely a fault. It is also said that the Lama is a mirror for the student, and that the student is a mirror for the Lama. And so when the student perceives the Lama as having faults, then maybe they're just actually seeing a reflection of what they have in themselves. When they see the Lama as being angry or being jealous or being very greedy or desirous, then perhaps it's that they themselves are very desirous or very prideful or so forth. It's like we know when people are prideful, and when they have a lot of pride, then they see other people as always being combative, as always fighting them. And so it's whatever they're seeing, their own faults that they're projecting on the Lama. And so in this way, the mirror of the student is the Lama. And so in this way, if we think about it like this, when we see faults in the Lama, then this actually becomes an aid to developing positive qualities. And so it's understanding this, that only when we understand this, that we can then have an unmistaken way of following the Lama.
다 내인지 알아서 머리 민배 툴룩 다나 신기 가르쳐 이 가르쳐다 레뉴기 추섭 치루 다 대저 삼담이 미나 오네 수수수 강통버들이 지 가르리지자데 갈아가보시라 지견도 통하다듯이 미나데 뭐니지 탈래 견 인데 민사 다제 제거하지래마도 수수기 통과점 낭점 될 이지체 갈아가버려 연대 더버지 낭비 미나데 야 연대 랜덤도 뭐니지 탈래 간데 랜덤도 다제 제거로마도데 가르쳐에 낭수점 수수 낭점 되버진 다 이지 이제체 갈아가보시라 today be the J, the Sham, J. Zonga Chibu Loma, Jangalori Genzengi. Tane Lajanji Lang to be Chetuela Lama Miroton, Garbi, Kida Pumburmaton, Sonamche, Radrigi, Tijara. Lang also Lang to be Chetachan, Lama Miroton de Yaw, which are rest. Kida Pumburmaton was rest. 기타 봉고통한 영어시라도 드레인 두산에 다 디스르셰 간다고 가르쳐다 다 대야지 라마치고 말해 지당 그 가사 수르질 의미랑 아주 가르쳐에 교인기 차는 믿어 윤댕이 차는다 아주 레균제 딸 렌제 섬기미 잡아야 하래 드네 민주산에 리신도 랑돈 돌레 제압에 리신도 하고 있는 하고도야지 매다 다들 냉가라면디 그 요거만 남게 가르친 거 알았잖아 조디 애는 신기原点은 따와 랑네 꽤네 따와 근데 충분히미나 애는 거를 렌제 랑돈 돌렌 근데 체비나 애는 상으로지 야고 연구를 했어 냉가라 조디 수수기 딱 조다 수수기 녀몽 발라서 근데기 경기 사는 다디 개심시나래 미신다기 지 잠진질라서原点 참오지마도 매비네 디原点디 꽤는原点 따스가 말해 이네야 原点도 통마체네 르샤디 르샤비나 에너지 가르쳐 예배고 망보지 정신이 킹로야 지당 다는 군제 랑도 망보지 다고 랑기 랑기 만으로 완냠슬래야지 이제보다 이제 내가 된지레스 그래서 그 아들이 인도산에 되게 해서 그랬어요.
And so when we think about the way that we are befuddled by the darkness of ignorance, the way that we are confused by the karma and afflictions, then it's difficult for us to actually see things truly. What we see as a fault, we need to examine. Is this really a fault in the way things actually are? Just because we immediately see something or just merely perceiving something as a fault or as a quality, it doesn't mean that it actually is. When we see something as a quality, as a positive quality, we need to examine and say, is this actually a quality? If instead we just take our immediate perceptions and merely hold those as being true, then it is difficult for us to say what it is. There is a student of the great Lord Tsongkhapa named Chenga Lodro Gyaltsen who said that for us to see the lamas as humans and not as dogs or donkeys in itself is a good thing. The reason, and what he's saying here is that we are so obscured by all of our karma and bad karma and afflictions. The fact that we can merely even see the lama as being a human is a very good thing. At least we're not seeing the lama as being a dog or a donkey. And so in this way, when we view other people, not just when we view the spiritual friends, but when we view other people, we should not look at them in terms of their faults, to find their faults. We should look at them in terms of their qualities. And the reason is that if we want to really practice we are so obscured by karma and effect, and the karma cause and effect is inconceivable, and so there's no way that we can really understand each and everything that we must take up or give up. So here, this is an important point that all of the earlier Kagyu masters have said. When we look at others, we should look at them in terms of their positive qualities. When we look at ourselves, we should look at in terms of our afflictions. And if we do this, then we will do what should be done and give up what should be given up and do that properly. And so, when we look at ourselves, we should look at ourselves in terms of the afflictions we have. We should look at the faults in our beings. When we look at others, even if they only have some small positive quality, such as a small amount of love and compassion, we shouldn't look at them in terms of their faults. We shouldn't say that what is a fault is a quality, but when we see a quality, we should recognize it as being a quality and then look at them in that manner. If we do this, then the gateways to committing wrongs will be closed, and it will open up the way to developing qualities. We will be able to properly practice without mistake the taking up virtue and giving up unvirtue. And so this is an extremely important point.
다 대들고네 게 신인기에 다 신이 때버디 다 노드를 주네 다 디젤이야 게 신인 때문에 변유 다 게 신인 때문에 변유인데 가수에다 망고에다 계신이 때문에 배운데 내배 내배도全世界 대화시 버스야를 잡아 마음발을 전부 대화시 버스야를 잡아 다다 전심이 대화시 버스야를 잡아 다 탐제기야 계획신인게 나 땜바다 계획신이라 때네다 초사집장 게들 초사집장 안타도 너는 이제 상와게 타도 상계 고마마도 함제 계획신이라 때문에 평유 데슬람나 맞지바 내가 임바래
And so now we have discussed the characteristics of the spiritual friend. Following that is a discussion of the benefits of following the spiritual friend, of which there are many. In brief, one could say that all of the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas who have appeared in the past, all of the Tathagatas and Bodhisattvas who will appear in the future, and now all the Tathagatas and Bodhisattvas who are appearing one after another in the present, all of them have served and followed the spiritual friends. And it is because of this that they have achieved all of the qualities. They have gathered the accumulations, purified the obscurations, and will gradually achieve the ultimate state of Buddhahood.
디나네가 담바 고만남기 신인 딘수 라마 딘수 대달할 때는 똑방문도 교네 세메비 신두 루즈 라소베 남다르라 대비네야 교회 신인 때마다 현실의 차이 맞지 아주 견도래.
Also, if we look in the life stories of the great masters of the past, and we see how it is that they taught and received the Dharma, how it is that they followed the Lama and then manifested the true realization, and were then able to bring limitless benefit to others, from that we can understand the benefits of serving the Lama.
tene pena choje tangage zugen sora ngage thamaba namgi zugen de kyoba choje bande adisha dawi minana jaardam phege tembal shindu phemba jachawa dana jinjugi jesu jubi gyu samji mi geba chwa dade ji jaargi pinju mangbo chebe nane 现代民主的这些，用国家做的新年代表的，托新年代表培育所的，大家也没这样。的呢，初期把那的下个那么做的，那么408，那么408个钱的初期个没用的，1900个了呀，1900嘛的，1900是个天个1000块。 Mumares Shengi Lama Silim be Chanjeba Tende Sembe Gablia and Lamsan Ya Shan Chamambo Tsayada Tsayodas Lamsan Ya Shan Chamambo Tsay Tendana Shingi Nye Naya Lame Tuji de Shenda Menjawa Jiyuset and the Sonje Yujin Bupado the Jenshap Siwala Sova. That didn't go arrest. That didn't do Konla. That digital Lama Siling Bala Kongi under Sewasan and Rando. Another Karsway Temu Chumstai arrest. And just a misery and Kanala Lama Mambushu do, Kananga Tembe Lama Mambushu do. Siling Bala Tazim 되는 매바치모 제과 김전 가르에 쉬두사네 아니 조지 반다지 셰게 ngala yune khayame semba sambo ezjes semba sambo dati lama silim bi kudingi den de semba sambo toche de lama silim bi kudingi so
For example, if we think about Lord Atisha, who is said to have been one of the greatest masters of the last period of the period of 500 years he lived in, he is someone who is recognized as a great master by everyone in India and in Tibet. And so when we look at the way that he followed, and he also is someone who had many different subsequent followers who upheld his tradition. And so among the ways that all the scholars and all the practitioners followed, there are many who followed lamas, but his ways was different. And from this we can see the real benefits or the power of serving a spiritual master. So Atisha's primary lama was the Lord Serlingpa. And whenever he had to say the name of Lord Serlingpa, he was unable to actually utter the word, utter his name. When others would say the name Serlingpa, he would immediately stand up and begin prostrating. And he would say that his own Lama had affection and compassion that was unlike any others. And he would, when he thought of this, he would begin to, he would shed tears for a long time. And so from this we can see the real affection and the real longing that he felt for his master, Serlingpa. And so often, or sometimes the students would ask him, they would say, "You have served many different lamas, but why is it that you have such strong longing for Lord Serlingpa?" And Atisha would respond to this that I myself have no qualities, but I do have a little bit of a good heart, and this is entirely thanks to Lord Serlingpa.
Tena singi ta jizu milarebe ta lama marwa nigida lalo javadina gyati kunse sanada tsame shen yibarje tinde ju ta jizu milareba de thomar to the sewalap maga tön somara maya tön to the sewalap ne ani yuge mise ana sing yuge karun rujom tene diwa mambo sa bi ne ya tene lama mamba tene lama kashi du jubala tene diwa da samje hame do thane kuzi ya chong du ne da de chumi bre te ya je lama de be phen lama ge ka su shin du be ge yuan de ni bre
Similarly, if we look at the connection between Milarepa and Marpa, their connection of master and student is one that, of course, we all know about it, the one of purifying all of his misdeeds and obscurations. Milarepa, first, at the behest of his mother, had studied sorcery and casting hailstorms, and then he sent spells that killed many of the people from his area. He destroyed the crops in his area. By doing this, he accumulated a great number of wrongs and misdeeds. But because of following the Lama Marpa, as Marpa had told him to do, he was able to purify all his wrongs and obscurations and achieve the state of Buddhahood in one lifetime, in one body. And this is also a benefit, or you could say a quality, of serving the Lama properly.
나는 신기 다 지기가 가서에 나는 신 에는 지주민을 로마 니마도 감보바다 나와도 레중바 남니야 아 대대신들에 레중바의 때즈 가서에 레중바가 라메 같은 숨자라서 라메 같은 숨자 이나 레중바 라마 마 밀레베게 지 가르쳐다 제와스는 다디 시부지 숙천부 현대 민주화지도와 랑게 어제다 지당 직대베게 지르시는 랑게 부능신 되게 제와지여베 라메 같잖아 밀레베게 툭 보고 와마네 마르반더지나 바지 레중방 마리 요상 다드네도 데 진데지다 간다라 데즈 레중방 그런데 시간업데 지 데즈 칼미닝게 시간데 캔사브지다 다네 라마라 카두이네 좀 록단더게 다 주도 고란체 케당 아케 요사르 다들 고삼단 고다갈치 오늘저 라마 밀레르버드 데테아르 데크 이마슴 다갈치 로존체 네츠레요 다 냠레 고란체 케당 아케 요삼 데게 다 록다게 데네담데 마오체 이나 타마데 강다라야 고란 가르주에 자외샤네 라마지준리야 고란지 테메 템보여바당 나든데가 툴라데네 가주에 지 굴루 마브로 가지네 식 나델라서 바다가도 배 섬임이게 봐 땅아 지 배 간정에 좀 차선배임 사게 그 리스 맞지 발지 다다 가주에 신년 때배 시고 주나 되네베 가주에다 가주에다 자솔 띵사와 난과에 자샤와다 들망고지 시야야래 내 주사다 상시에 먹어체 도나 신인 때베게 대표인 망고지 방디아레스
Likewise, with Milarepa's students, there was his student who was like the sun, Gampopa, and his student who was like the moon, Rechungpa, and the way they followed the master. Actually, if we look at the example of Rechungpa, there were 3 times when he went against the word of his Lama, but you could say that Milarepa had such strong affection for him, or such a strong feeling for him, like a mother, like for his own son. And so, because of this, he kept on giving him additional chances. If it had been Marpa, who was Rechungpa's master, he would have kicked him out long ago. So Rechungpa, if you could say that he was someone just by his very nature, he was a little bit obstinate. He didn't listen very well, and he thought himself, once he developed a few qualities, he thought, well, Milarepa, he has some accomplishments, of course, but I'm more learned than he is, and so he wasn't satisfied, and so he went to India to study more. He was not satisfied with his Lama Milarepa, and went to India, and when he came came back, he said, well, of course, in terms of practice, there's that, but I'm more learned. And so he developed this wrong view. And as a result of that, he did have some difficulties, but fundamentally, he had really strong devotion and longing, strong dedication and longing for his Lama Milarepa. And because of the power of this, when he came to the end of, at the end of his life, he went directly to the pure realm of Kechari without leaving a physical body behind. And there are many different stories in all the Tibetan traditions of these benefits of following a Lama. And so if we think about it, the benefits of following a spiritual master are deeper than the ocean and vaster than the sky. And so it's not necessary to list them all here, but we should just think about all these benefits that can arise.
다전에 마덴비 님이 있다고 땜비 표현이 쇼라 마덴비 님이 디즈리네 다고 쇼라 가르리 켄시미르셰 네르사나 다마고샤 쇼마와체.
And then as far as the faults or the problems of not serving a master, these can be implicitly understood from the benefits, from understanding the benefits of serving a Lama. And so there's no need to necessarily enumerate them here.
다전에 교회신이 된주되려 교회신이 된주되려 300권의 된주다 100권의 된주 남번이 예배임을.
Then there is the manner in which we follow the spiritual master, and so there is the way we follow them in terms of our attitude and the way we follow them in our actions.
다조 300권 된주의 가장 지 공도 쉬심을 이 대화 숨다 대바스 된 텐주기 추적이 된다마 이 대화 숨다 대바 숨베가 리아다 대바 데이터 계속 차대가 조조 대바래 대바도 무구.
And the attitude is, as I described yesterday, it is having the three different types of faith. So when we were discussing the precious human body with the 18 leisures and resources and the three types of faith, as it was mentioned, it is faith. So it is primarily having faith and devotion.
다들 지금 저의 골든주 될래야 미네야. 남겨 가르스래. rab drube cheba ding lunga gi shabdo da rab drube shabdo ding lunga yi shabdo tama sangsing gi shabdo sa la de yebi mre.
And then in terms of serving or following the Lama through our actions, there are the three methods that are talked about. The best method of service being service through practice, the intermediate being service with body and speech, and the least being the service through material offerings.
대학급들의 럼지 타숨 샤드 지음고 샤는 샤워에 마도베 타지도 녀봐야 말았어. 야한테야 수수 뢰진 바 뢰타진 어다 럽드베차바인 드베차바 부기만 힌다도 부기민사서 가서 다 되게 랑 뢰진 자야만 다 조데 라말래야 강 개바다 강 거버로 근데 이미나 다 대다 팀베 토네 수수기 때는 샤도 쉬시바 거버레스 대야 라메기 다투 개바서 말베 근데 충분히 이미나 배나 타마 선생기 샤도데 오늘 전에지 라마토 개바로 근데 충분히 의미나 대야 가르쳐 샤도 예럽도 교회기 뒤에 이나 라마토 개바랑 다는 신기 가르쳐야지 토공 감으로 좀 마셔나 ane rab dhube chewa yinsi, rab do pyu chuwa yinsi wa zamshegi, rab do di shabdo pyu chungdu yugume, dine yin dusane, diyan zo di ji tudan dun xeba, lame tukongda dun xeba, dine ji guwa di Keshma yinsi.
But when we divide these into the best, middling, best, intermediate, and least, then this is just talking about it in general. It does not mean that it is always in this case. So this is not a situation where we should decide, oh, the best way of serving the Lama is to give the offering of practice, so I'm only going to give the offering of practice and I'm not going to give the offerings. That is not the best way to do it. Because what is most important is that we serve the Lama in ways that will please them and in ways that they need us to service. We need to provide our service in harmony with what pleases and what the Lama wants. If the lamas are pleased, then even if we give what's the lowest offering, said to be the lowest offering, the material offering, if the lama is pleased with that, then there are occasions when this is actually the best service and the highest, most excellent service. Likewise, if the Lama is not pleased, or if it does not match the Lama's needs, if we say, oh, I am going to give the offering of practice, then this is not giving a good offering or good service. And so the main thing is that we need to do things that are appropriate to the context and appropriate to what will please the Lama and appropriate to the Lama's needs and intentions.
Lama tu yelu deya. Jidinbege dine nga ji mijigi sem sung mijigi ngo sung dele pele chap dewa ta ti sem igam mega ta dewa dinji mayimba kam dele ya lama tu yeba sa de ya khasa ge ngo sung ma zama yimba ta de ya ko che yi nyam len cha de ga le di mi jin si jin xia la lama chin yi de dewa de ge tu gong yeba ga de karesa na de 가르쳐요. 아주 남유 주주고 나는. 다 주주고 찍디지 봐다. 찍디 미지메지 겨 먹어체. 내가 안들 현된 주발에 하봐. 자와 예배 특시신다. 말해서. 현된 주야. 심제 탐제를 패드 주나? 대래 하베게. 예. 상계 탐제에 두 계약 처바시다게. 말해서 되는 시 간다라 라마 친이들 되면 지미나 되게 두고 예바가데 두고 추기 강고야래 아들이 뉴스안에 디준전 되네 하고 추이 냠네 제비나 라마도 지그래 최수 마송 추이 냠네 내도 마송 들리나 라마도 지그 말에 이미 준전 되네 너나 조대다 수수기 추이 냠네 천년지 충분히나 네 수수임이냐 가수에 뉴남 마너로지 충분해라 라메 토이네 디게로래 디니 디준젤 데네 안에 라메 토게 사디야 된도 다 수수르니기 최소의 냠래 상보지 충분히 된다로 디춘제로 치 자되게 알았어요.
And when we say that we are pleasing the Lama, then this doesn't mean that we're trying to accommodate the Lama or we're trying to placate the Lama in some way. And so this is not just an ordinary way of trying to please the Lama. We're not trying to please an ordinary worldly individual. Instead, it's primarily through our practice. And the reason for this is, as is said in the Way of the Bodhisattva, about when it speaks of the best way to fulfill the wishes of the lamas. It's in the Way of the Bodhisattva. It says that there is no better way to please the victors than to benefit other sentient beings. And so there are many sentient beings, and the best way to please all of the Buddhas is to benefit them. And so this is the greatest offering. And so if we have a Lama, an authentic Lama with all the characteristics, then what pleases them is when we please them, or when we fulfill their wishes through the Dharma. And so when it's our Dharma practice, it's our Dharma practice that will please the Lama. If our Dharma is not functioning as the Dharma should, or if our practice is not really is not really getting to the point, then this will not please the Lama. And so if we have authentic Dharma practice, then this is something that fulfills our own wishes as well as pleasing the Lama. And so here, when we think of pleasing the Lama, the meaning of this is that it is having good Dharma practice.
다 될래야 다 드리님의 동강라 다 주법균이기 롱지장하샤 말도 되스 말해. 다들인도 최지 주법균이디 팅지래야 미망고지기 라마지기 왕천보지 굴고도스다 결혼 주의임베스 주법균이라 미주기지티브레스 되도사 다 왕슈니디 담직송마고 바상겐 주의는 주의인스 담직송고는 안 주는도니서 말레스 안드니 미디서 담지사데 컨디지레 데베 샤나서 딘디지 컨디지 알아스 담지사데 네시망고 야망고 야 예나 사암분디스 야와샤비나 사다 무타망고 샤 다츠 뒤샤빈 라메 구송도 담지텔은 뉴도스 라메 구이 담지 송기 담지 토기 담지 구송토기 담지다 마가지고 오도스 대상 미카지 가르스도사나 라마도 탐지면 게스두산 라메 툭다만 게와 라메 까다만 게와 라메 공부 모두 준비는 다 된 저거레스 스도스 레란도 가도 시도스 라메 투고 모두나 툭다만 게다 저거레스 라 탐지 게와 마르스 라도스 이나티 라메 툭다만 게스야 코랑베 갈라 가보시다레스 라마 스니다 데바지미나 최민바 제사 탐지 툭단 게서 데 라마츠니데 데베네 주민기 자와탐지 제제탐지 도던 게데 갈라가버와스 라마츠니데 미딘바지네 다 최전나도 최마디안 담데 제양 고 라마디고 디스 카르조제 삼바가드 사야르스 라마츠니데 데베네 최장가 제고 최민바체는 도던 게도 데 갈라가버시다레스 데네 콘로니사 마레스 아드레스 라브레스 수마레스타
It just wouldn't do for me not to at least recite at least one story about Drupa Kunle. And so one day when the great Drupa Kunle, there was a lot of people who were all going to receive an empowerment from a master, and they said, "Oh, aren't you going to come along and take the empowerment with us?" And Drupa Kunle said, "Well, that depends. If when I take the empowerment I can achieve Buddhahood without holding any Samaya commitments, I'll go. But if I have to keep any Samaya commitments, I won't go." And so people were saying, "Well, why is that? Why won't you go if you have to keep any Samaya commitments?" And Drupa Kunle said, "Oh, well, Samaya, if you look at it finely, you can classify it, or you can divide it into millions or hundreds of thousands of different commitments. But basically, if you summarize them, they're the commitments of the body, speech, and mind. So this is what all Samaya is contained in." And so these days, people go to empowerments and they receive the Samaya, and they think to themselves, "Oh, as long as we just don't do anything that really violates the Lama's wishes, or don't say anything that goes along against the Lama's wishes, then that's okay. That's not a big deal." But actually, if you think about it, it's really difficult not to violate the Lama's wishes, because if it's an authentic Lama who has all the characteristics, then that Lama only wants you to do Dharma things. And anything that you do that is non-Dharmic violates the wishes of the Lama. If the Lama is not an authentic Lama, then whatever you do probably is okay, can be worked out. But if you have an authentic Lama, anything that you do that is non-Dharmic then violates the wishes of the Lama. And that is really difficult to keep. And so for that reason, I'm not going to go take the empowerment, he said.
단 노나 대자 계획신이 대자 로마 니갈로 다 개츠시라 차디가래 개체념을 이제 그런 자자 이제 고시 잡이나 자정업주 레슬람나 저거 아래 다치잖아 로마 망아연에 쳐야만 자자 주주든지 로마이나 쳐야만 딱 안다 그래님이네 라마도 로마 니갈로 개체념을 가시지기 라메 먼저 강강시하면 수순 뒤도 너 지시도 다데 갈아가고 싶다래 내가라베 디디지기 땅알 무구이 지람 죽으면 됐다 무구이에 지람 민족 다네 라만 디센다베 그뒤네 아스레다지 라말리아 군디브리 제도 시아레스 다지네 인주산 야정업중업주산에 저거래 지시나 로마 코란 망아연에 서야 말해 다 조조 저수수 매제되어 알아 되는 게 타발라면 켜디 타바랑라랑에 셰브르기 수만하시 된듯이 근데 인주산 디주산 되네 계획신이 계셔하는 신기 로마양 계셔 로마 계셔하는 신기 계획신이야 계셔 근데 니 빈수 지 계시 중디 지 가르치고 있는 인주산 디니 돈양 가지고 하디 계천부를 주제 삼천개 마도베 에네 계획신이 상부제비나 로마 상부제비나 그거 벤다스게요 말해 로마 상부제비네 계획신이 상부제비나 벤다스게요 말해 인주산에 다 빈수 돈양 봐 다데 밸런스 som으로 인지게라 밸런스는 다데 유지고 하디 계천 시다래 삼천개 근데 지 매비나 깔아가고 시다래
So basically, we have the spiritual master whom we serve. There is the student who does the serving, and both of these are of equal importance. It's 50-50. The importance is 50-50. You could say that. Perhaps you could even say that the student is slightly more important. Maybe 60 or 70% of the importance goes to the student. But in any case, there is equal importance of the Lama and the student. Because it's sometimes we might think to ourselves that, it all depends upon the Lama, and if the Lama is okay, then everything will work out. And so people might say, I've got devotion, but I haven't received the blessings. Why is that? And so they criticize the Lama for this, but actually it's a question of it being a 50-50 balance. The student is equally important as the Lama, and it really depends upon our own individual efforts. And so so in this way, it's like we need to realize that the Lama is the student and the Lama are equally important. So just as it is, if the Lama is important, then the student also has to be important. If the student is important, then the Lama also has to be important. These are mutually important. They are of equal importance to each other. And so if there is a good spiritual master but not a good student, then nothing's going to happen. Likewise, if there is a good student but no good spiritual master, nothing is going to work. And so there has to be a balance between the two. And it is important that we understand this, because without such a balance, then it is difficult for anything to happen.
다들 인주산에 라마도 로마산데 바이스클 som으로 강거리는 신 딱 콜로 강거리 콜로니아로 담아 콜로 망고치 된대요. 남기 콜로니를 지원해요. 아래 제가 다 로마데 라메 제 싱고로다. 라망엔 주 로마 제레 소는 주고만. 다 콜로디는 신 그런 니가로 교회에 비치고 봐. 아도 찌주셔서는 직부대 야부에나 건로지 뭐. 드레 주산에 강거리 콜로니는 신 니가로 교회에 봐. 대한 니가로 직제 직신토반 토바 드레인주산 디균세 때네 아니 개시중을 개화매버서는 다도 자치중선에 개시중선에 개화매버 니가로 개치염이인데 봐 나바르도 남주 가르송가르서나 개외신이 변디 남주 시주산에 시용지 개외신이도 나가 용지 탑을 개버서나도 되지니고 그래서 드레스에 주산에 7월 라마 개외신이 예바대 지보미셔봐 랑게 심규리야 녜네지 가르소 개외신이 쓰는 장도 가르소지 딘데게 람대용기 처디 수수술이야 가른 듈람 처디 챙게 셈리야 처디 차사 처디 앙사를 거야지 다디 개침을 차리 7월이야 엔다간다 라마 개외신이 되 최대한 딘데게 저리 앙사를 예비나 난그 셈리야 저리 앙사 매비미나 요아 매비치 데네 칠리 라마 교회 신이암 데네 가수에지 데네 예번는신 난 디유주산 디 예번는신 난그 셈리야 겁디주산에 가 대다 차다지 저리 앙사람 가다 대다 칠로 라마 예번는 나로라다 가다 라마지 상마르바다 데네비치 저리를 제지 수수에기 랑도르기 람 마노르와 지 용아지 딘디지 가르소에 듈름세난다도 다 딘디지기 배 치시루디 딱다 예베지 딘디지 고도와 내긴 주산디 지 레라브렘도 지 칠로리아 지 라마지 예베 잠지비 팽음도 다 나로래 저리 고아래 제사 내긴 주산에 되는지 도좀 세고다 개침이다
So when we think about a student and a master, then it's like the two wheels of a bicycle. So bicycles generally have two wheels. Of course, there are some that have more wheels than that, but generally they have two wheels. And when you have the two wheels, then it is actually able to go. And so in the same way, if, with the student, if the student is not ready to follow after the Lama. If the Lama goes ahead, then the student really can't catch up, or vice versa. Like with a bicycle, if one of the wheels is broken, then no matter how sound the other wheel is, it won't be able to go anywhere. So you have to have both wheels, and if you have both wheels on the bicycle, you can go wherever you like on it. Similarly, with a master and a student, you need to have both of them. They have to both be sound and both able to function and do what they need to do. And so for this reason, we say that there is no greater or lesser in their importance. There is no greater or lesser significance to these two. And often when we speak about the spiritual friend, we often say that there are the internal and external spiritual friends. The external spiritual friend is the master, and the internal spiritual friend is being skilled in means. So just having an external spiritual master is not enough. Within our mind streams, we have to have a spiritual friend there, and that is, we need to have someone in our mind streams, or some way in our mind streams to prepare ourselves to follow the Dharma, someone who can get us ready to follow the Dharma. And so, if there is an external spiritual master who's teaching us the Dharma, if we are not ready, if we do not have someone in our mind stream preparing ourselves and getting us ready to listen, then we will not be able to practice what the Lama says. And so, just as we need to have the external spiritual friend, we need to have within our minds, we need to have someone who can prepare ourselves and get us ready for that. And so, someone who can develop our, we need to be able to, we need to prepare ourselves to develop our internal qualities, and then we will be able to engage in the practice of, or fulfill our wishes to be able to properly practice the path of taking up what should be done and giving up what should not be done. And that is, otherwise, it is not so easy. And so, what is important for us to understand here is that it is not just that we need an external spiritual master. We also need to have the be prepared on the inside as well.
다 될래야는 유인 가르쳐서나 라말라 야와 먹고체나 나라주 강사 최되메 강사디 다 그런 가르쳐지 최된 이제 차는다 라메 차치기에 그래 대당 수송방 대다 차정 라메 차와 채버서는 다도 되게 다지 먹고지 알아요 그래서 수수익이 대 가르쳐지 디 냠수 레셰바에 냠수 레셰밤 야나지 대주 수수익이 딱 안더라 아주 고도 tum나 빼나샤샤비나 아주 다다 미다베 걸로 연구래 남다 뒤신 균주에서 뭐래 남된 균주 시즌 남된 균주를 때에야 야 아술이야 된다 뜬거 알아 남다 카차니 에너지 미다바 치와 미다바 레균데스 제제 카드 저거 말데 이비네 남대게 넘주르 되게 아술이야 된다 뜬거 대야 된다 대야 지배제 남 지샤베 인나게 인나톨 지샤베기 지 이기 수년자면 봐 응스 아술이야 천하지 진거라 미다베 천하지 요건 주의해 봐 끼지 믿어야 봐 근데기 다가는 미다베 손하지 지기에 대단 대신 아주 여기 점린 리터기 난게 따지 미다 창을 컨디지 미나 대단 뒤기 가다 아주리아 지den게 가주는 점린게 다 거래 정신선한다 야는 왜 니주선한다 다 가는 밑에 아주 믿는 거예요 대량은 좀 나와 다이라마스 다시 시가 왔더니 누사한테 소임이네 아주 다 가더라 계획신이 아주 가사 계획신이 되게 시행에 취소는 알아줘야 동어를 너게 넣으시 치료기 장외 디소임이네 아주래야 되지 된 거예요 제가 디균셀 때네 아주 냠스 레시나 다른 분은 랑게 자존도 봐지 드레르 지스도 아데 드르레 신제네 기르디도 때네 에네 기르디도 때네 좋아합니다 그런 거처럼 저거 직직 사지 기지 저봐 거 가르쳐야 스바 타마와 되죠 랑게다 좀 스바 타마와 되죠 에네 계신이 때문에 그거 봐구나 전적으로 사람 기지 저봐 드린 주스탄에 디소로 제제 에네 가다 드지 용규여비 수수 제니나 아 드린 주스탄 디규제 때네 다 조조디 당기 공도 쉬면은 아다 조조의 개국의 공도 쉬면은 신기 치 뭐비 딱 안다는 코란 치로 겐대다 난그 수수기 겐디니 빈주 란도 쳐네 라전도 야고 총 디니 잡아야 우리 수입니다 근데 신이 가르쳐야지 냠도 선한다도 냠도 공회 연구에 비치 대대비 친한 게 개인이보다 라저미 야부 맞춤 대니 잡아라고 상부 맞춤 의미나 어디 치료를 개인은의 민의숨 되게 미게 의숨 잡아오미네야 다 라저스게 매버 다 가르쳐다지 그냥 남주 뒤지스로 답에 랑고를 림부 당샤고 저지 안 랑고를 다니 줘야고 저지 다 드립지我们没去咱们这样开不了，他的路遇的还是咱们这样开不了的。 담년자 개위 디자 쿠란 하를 레 쿠란 담년들레 쿠란 하레 섬으로다 쿠란 년타를 치지 땅에 담년디 랑고를 집주에서 그래도 중요나 섬지 랑고 지til에 바상데 친제 담년 되지 돼 랑고 쿠란 자사면 그 담년들 암저 그렇다고 인거면 다 밀어 줘줘줘서 랑고디 하고 있어 말했다. 규미 진짜 그런 랑고 인상 버지 미세지 고유서래서 다그 단위게 랑고게 뭉세네 뭉세지 다 내려지 그 소다를 써야지 디드레셔서 아니 신이지 랑고디 암저도 레레지 뭉스도 그 렌자가도 디소르지 찬라다 년가 여비 레주산에 지기다 간다 치단 난기 겐디 니가로 개체념이 맞지다 뒷니 변수지 라주 야고지 용과지다 내가 야고 수과데 개심십 샤디도 섬정이
And so, if the way that we are going to follow or serve our Lama or our spiritual master is going to turn out well, then we have to realize that there are many different types of lamas. There is one sort of lama. A lama is the individual who actually teaches us the Dharma. This is what we often mean, but there are many other different types of lamas as well. And so, but that is for people who know how to practice them. If you don't know how to practice, then you might misunderstand this. For example, as will be explained in the next chapter or so, like when we're talking about impermanence, it said we can learn about impermanence by looking at the skies and the seasons. And so, if you know how to look at them, and you see the stars moving in the sky, you see the seasons changing, then you can come to an understanding of impermanence from this. You can get a feeling of what impermanence is without anyone saying anything about it. And this is a teaching that is not written in ink in any book or anything. It's an actual feeling. We need to get a feeling for the impermanence that comes from watching the changes in the seasons. And so, in this way, if we look at it, we can see how each instant everything is changing. We can see from looking at the world around us the impermanence. And so in this way, we can see that this is just part of the way the world is. And this doesn't depend on us following after some person. We see that with the world, we can say it's the nature of samsara. We can say it's the way things are. We in Dharma terminology, sometimes we call this the sign lama of impermanence. And what this means is that for the spiritual master, instead of just always relying upon an individual to teach us the Dharma, we can actually, if we take a look and see how things are, the external world can show us much that we need to know, if we know how to practice it. It's like the Pratyeka Buddhas. Pratyeka Buddhas are said to go to charnel grounds, and they sit there and they watch the rotting corpses and the skeletons. And by viewing that, they develop an understanding of impermanence and are able to achieve the state of Pratyeka Buddha. And without relying on or without any need for a spiritual master, they are able to liberate yourselves. And so, if you know how to look, then this can happen. And so, it's as I was just saying, we have to have the external conditions, but we also have to have the internal conditions. And these two need to mesh together. There needs to be a good link or a good mesh between the two of them. And if there is that good mesh and that good link between the two of them, then we will be able to increase what we could say is our experience and our realization. And yet, if these two do not come together, if there is no connection between the two, then no matter how much we see, no matter how evident it is to our eyes, there is no way that it'll mesh, no way that it'll actually work. It's like playing a guitar for a bull. So there's a little story here, and the story is that there once was a guitar player who was really skilled, a great guitar player, and everyone loved the way this guy played the guitar. And he thought to himself, "I play the guitar so well that everyone just feels so great. I bet even a bull is going to really enjoy my guitar playing." And so he went out to the pasture, and there is a bull standing around there, and he's sitting there playing some beautiful thing on his guitar, and the bull does not even glance at him. The bull is just sitting there chomping on the grass, munching away and going moo and things like that. And so this guy thinks to himself, "Oh, this bull just doesn't get it. He doesn't get my guitar playing." And so then he said, "Oh, wait a minute, if I do it differently." And so he played his guitar, so it kind of went moo, moo in a little way. And then the bull finally started, pricking up his ears, wiggled, and he looked over in that direction only when the guitar player made his guitar go moo. And so it's in the same way. We have to have both the external and the internal conditions. They are both important, and it is only when they mesh and come together and there's a connection between the two that it will work.
다 봐지 내려 심다 다시나 다전에 된 탑네 대당아 다 탑네 당아 디거리아 대중에 가는 것도 진스버래 다 지워합니다 레균데 코에 님이라서다 된제게 지 가르에 명함망 보셔버리면 다 간다야 다시 군주에 다 아래하게 말씀하다 근데 급하마 되지면 군주에 리토리아 팅담들이야 상황사 깔아가지고 슈구 니주 담범도 사면도 슈구 야당 업주 야다 업주 주주라스도 애들한테 사서 말해 가시 차나야 보도서도 사서 말해 만되션 근데 되셔라 시다 벤도스케 마시는 게 니팅도 봐 다 다다보도 시에스인바도 냠내 제비네 로징이지 냠내자 다 대냠내면 소지 다지 송고도 제고도 경한지 여러 다 차르고도 아대지다변 놈다 근줄 보디 자상마 로샤나 지다변도 냠수 말레나 남유지세 아주 추이콜로 연락드베가 추이콜로 거스 심제 동해 민도를 추이기들면 빠르도스 상계 좀 되더니 건주 모두 자즈만 손셔 대바 되는 따라 쳐다 다 단동지 죄기 되면 빠졌어요 다들 괜찮아 죄기 콜로만 거르셔야 된 따라 쳐 단도 거르셔서 다들 같이 해 다들 미세 가서 다들 대인두산에 다 된다고 치고 얘는 죄기 되면 빠르고나 다들 얘래야 가서다 대답아 손셔야 주반 냠내는 체 다 디나라 가네 보디 자즈야 디나한다 수수하게 매바다 삼바지 니 유기로 봤다 아 드인주산 딘데 매바다 삼바지 수수 냐버서 렌드리시야 마도 다디 가서다 차고도 꼬르고도 제고도 쟁하슬랍 수수 냐버서 말은 데시잖아 베더스케 아 드인주산 디주제 되네 다 디주제 되네 다 사사 말에 마사로 이내야다 칼리칼리 마음발가다 칼리칼리다 산주요아레 드린 주산에 케마스케 민도성도 드린 공다 가사시 니마 가시 영화 중에 드주사 가르사나 공다야 한지 켄사를 차용도 영화 중에 다 드린 공다 레질라도 영용교리 다 랍샤 레질라도 영용교리
So following this, it teaches about the method, the master's instructions. So we've already talked about the precious human life, but next there are discussions about death and impermanence, the karma cause and effect, the defects of samsara, and so forth. There are many different instructions. In any case, here in this Arya Chema Winter Dharma Gathering, I'm not going to be able to finish this all. I've only been through 20 pages. There's still 150 or 160 pages left. There's no way I can finish them now. And there's some people that say, oh, I should just read them, just give you the transmission, but just reading them is not going to be all that beneficial. Actually, I think that if we were able to practice everything that we have covered up to this point, we just really practice this for a year or two. If we could really practice this and finish the practice, then maybe that would be of all more benefit. It's like all the teachings of the Buddha. There are 100 volumes in the Kanjur, the collected words of the Buddha. And if we don't practice them, they don't bring us any benefit at all, no matter how much we read them. It's like when we have these 100 volumes, and when we do the 7-branch prayer, we always still keep on saying, please turn the wheel of Dharma again. We respect that you turn the wheel of Dharma. Or as it says in the way of the Bodhisattva, kindle now the Dharma's lamp for those who grope in the dark of suffering. And so we have these 100 volumes of teachings that are already there. And then we're still asking, oh, please give us more teachings. Actually, there's no need for this, because we haven't even begun to practice the teachings that have already been given, that we already have, that we have there. And we're still not satisfied with what we have, even though we're not practicing it, and say, please turn the wheel of Dharma again, kindle now the Dharma's light. We say this over and over again. Actually, if first of all we were to actually practice the Dharma that has already been taught, then there must be something in those 100 volumes that's appropriate for us and that matches our capabilities. And we just have to practice this. And so if people say, oh, you have to finish the text, you must turn the wheel of Dharma, if we don't actually practice it, there is really no benefit to it. And so for that reason, we will not complete the teachings on the jewel ornament of liberation this year, but eventually we will go through it all, and there's no problem there. And so no problem there. Now, in the past few afternoons, I have not been able to come. Something keeps on happening where in the afternoon I just don't feel quite right. But this afternoon, even if it's the last thing I do, I'll come.